This is Father Patrick Briscoe.
And this is Father Bonaventure Chapman.
And welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all those who support us. If you enjoy the show, please consider making a monthly donation on Patreon. Be sure to like and subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. Well, Father Bonaventure, how are you today?
I am doing well. It is summertime, July, so we're kind of in the midst of it. June, I always find June is like a freebie. It's like a Friday. So Friday is to the summer as Friday is to the weekend as June is to the summer. So,
Nice.
if you don't celebrate or you don't get summery and relaxing and sort of thing on June, it's okay. Just like Fridays, it's great, no pressure. But then like July is the kind of key point, and then August is the depressing. It's like the Sunday of the weekend. I mean, Mass is there, so that's great. But it's like Monday's coming. You can feel it already. And same thing with August. Like, oh, I know that we've got time left, but it seems like it's gone. But July is that's where you make your money in terms of summer wise. We're right in the middle of that.
Now, we've been passing a little bit like ships in the night. We've been all over the place, despite it being only the Friday of summer. Having
That's
passed,
right.
I guess we're headed
Well,
towards
we're in Saturday.
the middle of Saturday of summer.
Yeah, we're dead. We're dead in Saturday. I mean, like Saturday night's still coming, but we're good morning. Maybe it's time for lunch in summer. We got to make it.
But how have you spent your summer Friday so far?
Well, so far, it's different because So Father Patrick and I live at a house with tons of men, brothers in formation, but they go away in the summer to do their summer ministries. And so the house quiets down, you could say, and goes in like a skeleton crew. It's a ship, references all this whole time. That is a very skeleton crew, just enough to make the boiler work and this sort of thing. And that's where like the House of Studies right now, if you come to worship with us, you will hear cantors you've never heard before. And things will be a little bit off key and otherwise because there'll only be like six of us or something at any given time because we're always moving about and things. This is a time for retreats, not just going on retreats, catching up on those, but giving retreats. A time for us to get away from the house to make some cash for the house. So I've been giving retreats or giving some retreats in Philadelphia, which has been great. So I got to see the City of Liberty there, and then just carrying on with other work. So so far I'd say B- summer so far, like in terms of relaxing and resting, this sort of thing. But it's there. You?
Well, if we're grading ourselves, I have to give myself a C-, I think, for in terms of restful summer. But I have seen a lot of cool things. I got to be down in Sea Island in Georgia with a group of college students preaching retreats down there. That was beautiful. I went to the Pacific Northwest for the first time. I've never been that far, all the way over.
Whereabouts?
Went to Portland for a week for the Catholic Media Association conference.
It's a great
which was
my homeland.
I was very nervous. This is Chapman territory. I realize this. But frankly, I was nervous. I didn't know what Portland was going to be like, but it turns out I loved it. I thought it was
It's a great city. It's really nice. The downtown is getting a bit derelict at this point, but the Rose Garden is absolutely gorgeous. The Japanese Garden, the Washington Park, overlooking the city. Powell's bookstore. I hope you got to spend some time there. It's the biggest bookstore in the world, I think, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Bookstore was amazing. Rose Garden was amazing. I love the river, the water that just cuts right through the city. Mm-hmm. And it was so green. I think that was the thing that I was most struck by. It was a very green city, lots of trees, just the color of it. And it reminded me, with all due respect to Washingtonians, the DC is not a real city. It's a fake city.
Yeah,
people come here to do things. It's just purely functional. Even the design betrays that, right? It's not organic at all. It's just totally pre-planned and all about government and business. And so the spirit of the place, the spirit of Portland, was just very different than the spirit of DC, which is just go 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 go. So I think that actually takes us to what I wanted to start getting into for today's episode. I wanted to talk about boats and boating, and part of the reason is because for me, over the summertime, I have always found that the most restful, the most relaxing vacations, the most relaxing trips for me involve water. being near water, being around water. Like I love that retreat I got to give at Sea Island in Georgia because we were by the ocean. I love going to the
Hmm.
lake with my family, and I think there's something about boats and water that I think is fundamentally restorative. Now I know some people are mountain people, but this is not a mountain episode. This
Hmm.
is this is an episode about boats and water, and I think we really need that. What's your initial take on that? Do you find the same?
Yeah,
If
there's
you need to
something.
recharge, where do you go?
Oh, just sit in my room. Um, but there is something about yeah. I as the listeners will hear, Father Patrick and I have a different experience of boats. Boats are racing, so sailing for me. Which is a charge, and you get to kind of practice, and it is good to sail sometimes, just to enjoy yourself in the water. But there is something about the water, I guess. I mean, if I think phenomenologically about it, it's this calm space. It can be, you're generally not going in during thunderstorms and saying, I'm going to go relax in the water during the storm. You don't do that. But and generally, you get this kind of just feeling of calm. You might, if when you're on the water, there's a buoyancy, of course. It's kind of floating. We could get back into, we like to be like weightless in a sense. And it's away from things. So when you're on the water, you're on the water. When I'm on the land, I've got a Starbucks store next to me, a building over here, a house over here. Like everything's, you can just build up on land very quickly. So you have lots of things around you that you can go to. Whereas in the water, the only thing that you're standing on is the boat, you could say, and there's nothing around other than boats. So it's very freeing in that way. There's not many distractions and opportunities for other things. You're just there by yourself in a sense. There's a solitude to boats on water, just phenomenologically, because of the fact that it's water and then you, and that's it. Regardless of how many people are on the boat and how big the boat is, it's just such a smaller space than anything else. You also feel that um, you're a guest, in a sense. Like we're not water creatures, we're land creatures. I think. Why no? So when you're in water, it's something different. It's something that's not supposed to be there. It's not like I feel like I'm trespassing on Trident's realm or something, or the fish are upset because there are now humans here. But and saying, well, we don't come on your thing, we don't jump on your land, you stay out of our water. They don't care, and so it feels like we can be a part of this, but there's still this experience of you're a guest. You're not meant to live here, so it's a place to go to. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, so there's lots of reflections, just the experience of being on the water, and then also the fact that um, when you're on land, I don't generally think about what's under me. I think it's dirt and worms, basically. It's not that exciting. Then there's magma at some point. We do our earth science course, Rocks for Jocks. But I don't generally think about what's under my feet. Like I'm not on things. If I'm in a cemetery or if I'm in an old cathedral in England, I might be walking on bodies, this kind of stuff. But in general, I don't think about things under my feet. I just assume that it doesn't matter. It wouldn't matter if I was on a steel ball, if the Earth was a steel ball with nothing, or like whatever's under there, dinosaur bones or whatever. I don't care about that stuff really. But in the water, it's impossible not to feel like there's things under you. Lots of things. There's creatures and fish and plants. I mean, you're walking on top of plants and animals. Like when's the other time that you walk? I guess when you walk in the grass, you're kind of walking on plants and animals. But it's more cognizant of it. I mean, these are bigger animals, shall we say? Unless we're talking about Dune, um, and those giant worms. So that's just I've got plenty of thoughts, but they're just it's a different space, so it immediately just sets you apart from what you normally do, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that experience of vastness of bodies of water, larger lakes of the ocean, rivers, even to an extent, right? That experience of vastness kind of draws us out from where we're at, and I think we really need that. I think that there's something key about boats and about water, about boating that is fundamentally a part of our needed recreation, right? So I've been thinking about this a lot about how much people have been working. So Fortune magazine had an article that reported that the average unused paid time off in 2021 was 4.6 days. So Americans are leaving 5 available vacation days on the table, 4.6, almost 5 available vacation days on the table. In 2020, American workers left an average of 33% or 5.6 days of paid time off on the table. We're just not we're just not willing to engage in this kind of recreation, and I think there's something about that we really need to think, we really need to take seriously. I think this claim that we prefer work to recreation, that we prefer work to leisure, is important to recognize and acknowledge. Joseph Pieper, the German philosopher, argued that leisure, it must be remembered, he says, is not a Sunday afternoon idle, but the preserve of freedom, of education and culture, and of that undiminished humanity which views the world as a whole. Leisure is not a Sunday afternoon idle, but the preserve of freedom, of education and culture. And I think that's really true. I had a dramatic experience of this as a kid, right? Because going to the lake is a stepping into its own culture, right? There are all kinds of things you learn about caring for boats, about the way you behave on the lake, the way you drive them properly, that my parents handed on, right? That were part of this. It's an introduction into a deeper thing. One thing that we used to do is we would go to Mississinawa Reservoir. Who hasn't heard of that, right? In central Indiana.
This is the most bourgeois episode in Godsplaining history. Carry on.
True. So we would go to the lake. We'd get there early. We would ski, and then we would have breakfast. And we would breakfast. We would make breakfast on like a Coleman camper grill or whatever, at the picnic area. And we would overlook this picnic area, overlook the boat ramp, and we would watch people try and launch their boats. And it was very interesting because many times people were very bad at this. They clearly did not have the skills handed down to them. They weren't really introduced into this particular culture. They had no idea what they were doing. Husbands and wives, would just break down in huge fights. And then other people would just accomplish the most amazing things. Like I remember one time seeing a giant RV, just a huge RV towing a jet ski that put this jet ski trailer in the water effortlessly. It took them like 60 seconds. Just swung around, backed up, put the little jet ski in the water, and took off. So some people have it. They've got this tradition for them. It's a totally restful experience. So Father Bonaventure, what do you think contributes to or takes away from boats and boating as a kind of true recreation, as a kind of leisure that is restorative, the kind of thing that can take us out of our drive to?
Well, I mean, I have to say your description of boating sounds awful.
So, wow,
I mean,
painful. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is just a joint of nature, I suppose. On ours, that what Father Patrick's describing, and maybe this is what some people have done, is motorboating, as far as I'm concerned. Which it sounds, yeah. Well, there's a recreation to that, I suppose. It's So let me comment on that, and then we can perhaps go into our debate about whether that's actually a good thing or not. As a sailor, I think I hate that. I think it's deeply against God's nature and the created order, and you miss out on all the true lessons that you could actually learn from boats because of motorboating. But there is there's a play aspect to it. I think a leisure. It's important in leisure not only to think and to restore and to reflect and kind of defrag, you could say. That's kind of passive leisure. That we need time off. So just to let things kind of settle in our mind, that we can't be working all the time. I mean, sleep is the most biological example of this. But it has to be wakeful leisure as too, just to rest and sit and think. And we don't often do that because of our phones and such, and we have opportunities to always be actively doing something as opposed to passively letting ourselves just kind of get readjusted. I think the other part, though, there is as Pieper said, it's not just it's not just a Sunday afternoon idle, but it's a productive thing. It's something you're working on, and there I think play is essential. You wouldn't think that leisure and play when you think of like sustaining a culture. But play actually is a really important thing, just developmentally, psychologically. As a child, when you're playing, it's developing the imagination. You're taking on different roles. You're creating worlds, all this kind of stuff, which doesn't end. It's not like when you're a child, you're playing and you have to create worlds because you can't find worlds. And then once you become an adult, you find worlds. No, it's you always need to create worlds, and in fact, that's what we're meant to do as creatures, is to create the world, not just take it as it is, but to make it, civilize it, humanize it, to have dominion over it. Genesis, blah blah blah. And that's what play is kind of for as a child, but it's essential as adults too. I think just humans, play is an activity. We change our modalities of play. So whether we play sports or tennis or card games or any, but some kind of free world association and activity that is not aiming at anything beyond itself. So it has that structure of a thing in and of itself, just like learning, for instance, is a good in itself. Whatever you could learn how to do something, just learning some things is good. And the best things in life are good in themselves, and that's what play. It's a natural good, and it has this. It's a referentially ending character, so that it doesn't. You're not playing in order to do something better, although it will make you better if as you play and relax in this way at certain times. Um, or that you're trying to win money, for instance, all the time. It might win you money if you're playing for money and gambling, or if you're having competitions, this kind of thing. But just in and of itself, play is an end. You're playing a game to play a game, and the game is entirely different than the world. It's its own little world, but it has its own end in it and its own goodness. And I think that recreational activities are recreational in that way, that they help you to recreate the world and to go back into also the workaday world and such with a flexibility, perhaps seeing things and perhaps having a little more agility than you would otherwise. And I think that's what, so boats and boating in terms of recreation on the lake and things is, you're not trying to get anything done on the lake, you're just there and you're being active on it. And water skiing, or just doing whatever Father Patrick does on boats. And there's the playful dimension to it, that you're just doing this, and it's not like something. It's not like something you earn to do. Like, oh, I earn to have this time off, in a sense. But it's a constituent part of our life that we play in some fashion. And playing on the water has all those other dimensions to being that separate space as it goes.
I really like this emphasis on recreation, because I think there's something primordial about this, about boating, at least certainly the way my family engaged in it, right? So you get up, the water is calmest in the morning, and
Mhm.
often the best time to go water skiing is right at sunrise.
You're killing me. I
And
just hate that.
often
What?
often no, but it's so romantic, it's so beautiful. So
No,
so
there's
the
nothing
sun is
romantic
just
about
coming
water
up.
being dragged along at 50 miles per hour on water.
33, but that's okay. So the thing that I love most about it, right, is you've got smoke coming up. The sun is just cresting over the horizon, and you've got just a few people, and the lake is silent. There's nobody on it but you, and it's this moment of kind of coming back. And when you water ski well, of magnificence. The fact that a human being can do this is just extraordinary.
Dear
Now, okay,
listeners,
so
yeah, Dohan, dear listeners, can we just stop for a second? So if the water is calm, it's silent, you're creeping up. It's this perfect place of rest where you will now enter into a passive mode of play. What are we going to do? We're going to rev up a giant engine. We're going to spew smoke into the air, and we're going to have screaming as people are zigging and zagging around this. That's exactly the rest, the kind of thing we're talking about here. This is why God love you. God love you. This is just an abomination,
okay, we'll make your argument for sailboats.
I
How does
will.
sailing engage this primordial moment?
Yeah, the beautiful part
Because you
about
don't go
sailing.
sailing at daybreak.
No, you can. But this wind isn't usually good then. So
Correct.
one is that so the here I mean, I'm a philosopher, so I think you make these distinctions here that some might say you're just making this stuff up. But I think serious about this, and I just hate motorboating for this reason. Not just because sailors don't like them, because motorboats just they get to do whatever they want, and they don't pay attention. They create huge waves and wake, and they just kind of annoy us. It's not that. It's this. It's the fundamental human difference between these things and the creational difference. Because motorboating is kind of a demonic activity. It's a satanic drive to power and control, whereas boating is a kind of Adamic, creational, Christic, even you could say, activity. Why do I say that? Because in sailing, you are responding. You are responding. You are active, of course, because you're moving around sheets and you're raising sails and you're being attentive and you have to steer the boat and pay attention. But it's always it's like a Marian kind of dimension. So yeah, I think it's Satan versus Mary here. You're responsive. So in her fiat to the archangel, she's responding. The fiat is a response, but it's a response to the greater call and the gift of God to the incarnation. Or she's responding. She's always responding, and that's what sailing is, because you don't get to decide when the wind comes up in sailing. If there's no wind, you can't sail. You don't get to decide how you're going to. The wind is in total control, and your job is to be attentive to it. And the best sailors are those who are the most attentive to the details of the wind, of the waves, of the tides, all of these things. You are kind of you are at the mercy of the water and the creation and the world, and yet you are able to enter into that and do something with it. You're able to have beautiful races, enjoy leisure if you're sailing, this sort of thing. Make it human. It's nothing more beautiful than spinnakers going downwind. This big, big, beautiful sails, colorful, it's aesthetically pleasing. People are enjoying themselves. It's a great thing, but it's all because you're responsive to the world and you're attentive to it. It's a listening. It's a dedication to it, and there's a great rest in that, and a realization of your creaturely status. So as a sailor, you're very attentive to the fact that you just don't have total control over things. You do your best, and you're paying attention, but it is the water and the waves and the wind that are the ones that decide yes or no. In motorboating, as far as I can tell, and the little times I've done this, because I've been forced at certain points, and I'm an open man, I try to think about this. You get out there and there's no wind, and you say, who cares? I'm going to rev up a giant engine, and you say, well, I want to go over there, and you say, that's going to take too long because the wind's in the wrong direction, this sort of thing. You say, who cares? I am going to treat this water and this wind and this its own phenomena, and I'm going to turn it into like I don't know, land, where I just get to drive around, do what I want, So I'm going to destroy the character of acting on water as responsive to waves and wind by just usurping that through technological power and just dominate it again, is sort of thing. So this is like a deep, sinful kind of. So if we go to Cain, Adam's children, he has Cain, and then Cain's children are the smartest men, Tubal Cain, Jubal Cain. They are the ones who are metallurgists and all of this sort of thing. It's the seed of Cain, whereas the seed of Adam going to Mary is kind of the sailing thing. Okay, that's what I got. What do you think about that?
Perfect. I disagree entirely. For the purposes that I attempted to illustrate with my romantic view of skiing, of its necessary time, but I do think the one thing that we're agreed on is that both, water skiing, motorboating, and sailing put you in touch with nature in a way that's different from our workaday lives, right? Because you're not going to go out water skiing, in a storm. It makes you subject to God, to His providence, to His designs, to the natural world in a way that we're not in everyday life. And this, I think, is fundamentally restorative. This invokes leisure. This draws us back to the real purposes. I think I think that we touch something very important with the nature of play. That it means something to go outside of ourselves and to pursue an activity with the intention of nothing other than accomplishing that activity, right? So my grandfather water skied until he was 70, which he was very excited about. And this is one of his goals. And it was the most playful I ever saw him. He's a very accomplished banker, very serious fellow. kind in his own way. But when he water skied, like that was when he was really quite playful, and that demonstrated something important to me as a child. So I think the element of play is important. So we have this respecting the natural order of things. We have the importance of play, and I think finally we have the reality of moving beyond just our normal pattern, our normal order of life, right? So I think Americans pursue work. I was sort of asked this question very gently, right, at the beginning of the episode. I said, well, why don't we take vacation? I think because Americans pursue work because work is easier than having fun. If that makes sense. Boats are a lot of work. We have to admit that, caring for them,
Oh yeah.
planning a trip. All of this requires a lot of effort on our part, and it's easier for most people to simply carry on accomplishing the tasks at hand in the workaday world, pursuing the duty they have, than it is to come up with something that's going to be truly restful, a pleasant experience that's beyond the norm. It's easier for most people to keep on working than it is to come up with the kind of thing that can be really restful and rejuvenating.
Yeah, well, and I
So
was
that's
thinking
my
about
third
this.
little principle I want to slip in.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think the other thing about boating and boats in this is they do require a lot of work. And so much of our play is kind of, we do work, and then we just go and have everything like given to us. I suppose you just go to a park, you go to somewhere like this, we're going to movie, the sort of thing where you're entirely passive. But again, with this
Right.
leisure as an active kind of response to something, a principle. In boat, I remember, with anyone who's a sailor knows that, and I assume this is true for motorboating too. I assume it's similar. Is that it's just a lot of work when you're out in the water, to set things up to get the boat there. I mean, remember some like when you're a kid, you hate doing this. I remember my father's a great sailor and taught us how to sail, and so we'd go with him, and the sailing was fine, but there's a lot of preparation in terms of the boat has to be pulled in and out of the water. If it's a larger boat, it stays in. But off season, you have to fix all the lines, work on all this, like, clean the boat, make sure the boat's ready to scrape the bottom. I mean, there are these weekends of events of going and buffing and preparing all of this. And initially, I think it was kind of a drain, and it was one of the things you did to get to the boating.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but as
Mm-hmm.
I grew older, I think it was in college or something, I started to actually enjoy that part of the process, because I could see it in terms of that, of what was going to happen, and it was an activity for something else, but again in its own kind of world, and it stopped becoming a sort of um, means to an end, but rather a part of the activity there. And there was something restful about that, even though you're working and cleaning and drilling things and putting up masts and all this kind of stuff. It was a great opportunity to just spend time with my dad and my brother, and talk and relax around this activity. There wasn't aiming for any money, wasn't aimed for, there was no deadline particularly. We could have put the boat in a day earlier, what have you. But it was a relaxing work that was rejuvenating. And so I think that, again, leisure is not just sitting down and kind of watching. It's good to do that too. It's good to have total passive leisure, but the play aspect of leisure that has also this development activity to it, its own little world thing, um, is extremely rejuvenating. And I got that from my father, and from boating and sailing particularly.
Well, whether you'll join me in saying non serviam, or whether you prefer Father Bonaventure's overly romantic and Marian
Marion.
argument for for sailing, I do hope that you find an activity this summer, listeners, that's very restful, that's very rejuvenating, that follows this sort of pattern we've built out of the kind of rejuvenating and recreative activity that all of us need. Thanks to all of you who support the podcast. We're grateful for your donations. If you'd like to tie to our work, check us out at patreon.com/godsplaining. We invite all of you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We ask that you would please like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. People, when they're deciding whether or not they want to listen to a podcast, people read the reviews, and everything you say about us that is true and that is good is helpful to us. Visit godsplaining.org to shop our merch, get dates and information for our upcoming Godsplaining events, and to see what the Friars are up to. Again, know of our prayers for you, and we ask that all of you would pray for us. God bless.